Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from El Nerdo Loco. I have a question. Whenever I created a character, I'd eventually end up using them as part of some of my internal dialogues. But you have an advantage in a way I didn't. Your characters are right there in your home physically. Do you ever end up talking to them off camera? And is that ever a source of inspiration for your skits? A Stephen Stuffy question. And in the very week that Stephen Stuffy is returning as a regular weekly series on this channel from now until the end of the year. It's so, ooh, it's just like that. Yes. Talking to the characters and talking as the characters, off camera or outside of the videos has been a huge source of inspiration for me in the Stephen Stuffy videos. Before I ever did Stephen Stuffy videos, my wife and I would talk to each other, you know, with the animals in character just to crack each other up. And we still do that, just, you know, to be funny and to just goof on each other. The characters themselves come from that. My wife basically created the character of Millicent in the car on the way home from buying that stuffed animal. I had said that I wanted to, this is a few years ago obviously, I had said I wanted to add a character to Stephen Stuffy. I wanted the character to be a female character, and we went to Toys R Us and we were looking at the stuffed animals and we found Millicent, and in the car on the way home, within the space of maybe 20 minutes, just from fooling around with the animal, she had found the voice, she had found the personality, she had found the preoccupation with like being proud of being a husky, being proud of her lineage and being purebred, and this very sort of haughty, superior personality that Millicent has. Like, she had come up with all of it on the way home. And that has remained the core of that character ever since. And that a lot of them are like that. Toby Benson is the same way. I just sort of picked up Toby Benson one day and started playing around, and this voice and this personality came out. And yeah, it's a lot of it is having the animals there, having a very strong sense of who they are as characters, and just being free, having a partner that is also on board with this and is also incredibly creative and inventive herself, and just being able to bounce stuff off of each other. And come up with ideas, come up with jokes, come up with personalities. Yeah, it's a tremendous help. It's a tremendous help. And it's one of the things that makes those videos such a joy to create. Phil James, hey Steve, are you familiar with the men's lib movement? I feel it provides an excellent environment to discuss problems faced by men in a sensitive way while keeping anti-feminist rhetoric away. While not everybody in the men's lib movement is a feminist, its goals are tangentially aligned with feminism. Do you feel such a movement can be a legitimate form of social justice? Yeah, I do. I haven't made it a real focus of when I talk about these sorts of issues, but I've mentioned before, I think there is certainly a place for a positive, progressive men's movement that works alongside feminism, that pushes in the same direction as feminism, that is not just anti-feminism and misogyny in disguise, like the men's rights movement, for example. Yeah, absolutely, because look, even though men do not suffer gender-based oppression as a rule, even though the system is sort of aligned to favor men in general, there are still many ways in which men suffer, and there are particular issues that are unique to men. And that deserve attention. And there are certain areas where men suffer where they don't receive as much attention. For instance, even though domestic violence is predominantly an issue that affects women because women are more likely to be victims, men are still victims of domestic violence as well. And men who are victims of domestic violence deserve to have resources available to help them get out of abusive situations. There are people who I've talked to in the past who are very much in support of that and recognize that a men's movement cannot be an enemy of feminism. It has to be an ally of other social justice movements. It has to recognize the state of the playing field, so to speak, and it has to be willing to serve the needs and speak up for the issues that are of particular concern to men, without pretending that the issues that affect women or other groups don't matter or don't exist. And as long as it can do that, I'm all for it. Francois Lacombe, whatever method YouTube uses to demonetize or eliminate toxic channels also catches a lot of very legitimate and worthwhile ones. Like pretty much all liberal news channels, all atheist channels, regardless of tone and content, channels documenting human rights abuses and genocides like the events in Syria and Myanmar. The list is quite extensive. I heard someone say that YouTube is using a battle axe where it should be using a scalpel. I think they should ease up on the whole demonetizing thing until they can figure out a way to reliably catch the bad ones without netting in a shitload of the good ones right along with them. Any thoughts? The thing is, what YouTube really needs to do is to just hire people to do this. That will be incredibly expensive and incredibly labor intensive because the sheer volume of videos that YouTube, that are uploaded to YouTube on a daily basis is just mind-boggling. And when you think about even if it's only a certain percentage of those videos that will be reported as being potential violations of terms of service or community guidelines or you know, containing hate speech or whatever, that's still a huge number of videos that need to be reviewed. And the system that they have in place now kind of automatically tags potentially problem videos, and then you can request a manual review if you feel your video has been unfairly demonetized. And that's a very clunky system, and that puts a lot of the responsibility on the content creators. So you know, if one of my videos is unfairly demonetized, I have to go through and go, okay, click the little box, I would like this to be reviewed, you know. And I've had to do that a bunch in the last few weeks, and with only a very tiny handful of exceptions, they've all been approved, you know. So in the long term, it hasn't really hurt me that much. It's just created a little bit of extra work for me to have to go through and submit certain videos of mine that have been selected for demonetization for a review. And once they're reviewed, most of the time they're approved because my content is not objectionable for the most part. If a person watches it, they can see, okay, this is no problem, I can let this through. It would be much better if YouTube just had enough people working for the company where they could afford to, whenever a video is flagged as being a problem, a person will watch that video immediately and be able to tell, okay, is this a violation or not? If it's not, let it through. If it is, then you take action. You take it down, you delete the channel, you do whatever action is warranted according to the policy. But YouTube probably isn't going to do that. Malevolent Divinity, do you think you'd be able to perform a job that required you to, on occasion, condemn terminally ill people so that their illness couldn't pose a threat to others, presuming said job otherwise saved far more than it would overall condemn and abjectly lacks the resources to set up something like an effective quarantine? In such a situation as you describe, I would hope that there are some people who would be capable of doing that job so that larger groups of people were not harmed by the disease that is being stopped. But I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I would have the heart to do it. That's just a limitation I think I have. I recognize that a job like that would need to be done. You know, I would recognize that the broader population would need to be protected. But I don't know if I have the heart. I don't know if I have it in me to condemn individuals to death in order to protect the broader population. The broader population. Even though I believe that sort of thing, as rough and as awful as it is the right thing to do. I just don't know if I have it in me to do that. I would feel that very, very strongly. And being able to say, well, but you did it for the greater good, that wouldn't be as much of a comfort to me. You know, I would still feel the responsibility. I would still feel the weight of being responsible for the death of that person, even if I could tell myself that it was all for the best, you know. So I know that it's not my job. It would not be my job, but I would hope that it would be somebody's job, if that makes sense. That's the coward's answer. Oh, I would hope somebody would do it. I can't do it. I hope somebody else can do it. It's the coward's answer. Another Volvox fan. Question: what is your opinion on the show Supergirl's feminism? Elaboration: I find it hideously overdone and very clumsy. The pilot has probably the most extreme example when, in the final fight, her sister answers, when told about Supergirl, she can't handle it. Why? Because she's just a girl? That's what we were counting on. And often use it as an example of pop culture monetizing and hideously abusing feminism's good name. I do, however, get a little bit of pushback when doing so from people who argue that showing Supergirl as a very human hero, susceptible to the same sorts of obvious manipulations as the rest of us, has a very humanizing effect. I agree with you that the show's feminism is very uneven and very problematic. And I think part of it is that the show is just imperfect. It's written by imperfect people who don't always nail the message perfectly. And I think also it's a show that serves many masters. You know, it wants to be a positive, progressive show. It wants to have very progressive politics. It wants to be empowering to women. It wants Supergirl / Kara to be a role model and a hero to girls and young women. But it also wants to be an adventure show. It wants to be a little bit of a soap opera. It wants to be a likable, entertaining, exciting show, you know. So it has many different masters to serve, and sometimes one factor will suffer so that another can kind of, you know, be focused on for a while. I like the show primarily because I just think it's a fun, exciting adventure show. I love Superman. I love the world that Supergirl creates. I love Kara as a character. I love Melissa Benoist as an actress. I think she does a great job. I think it's just a fun, interesting, exciting, pleasing show to watch. The feminism, the progressive politics, the social commentary that lines up for the most part with my own thinking and my own priorities, that's icing on the cake. I love that the show has those elements. And I agree with you that it doesn't always do a good job with those. And I agree with you that it should do a better job, and that in a way you're concerned about it sort of being an example of mainstream pop culture co-opting feminism for its own purposes. I get that completely. I agree with that. But I would rather have a show like that than have a show that just doesn't give a shit about these issues, that doesn't even try to get on the right side of these issues. And I think Supergirl at least tries to get on the right side of these issues while also being basically an action-adventure show. And I think it does a good enough job that, you know, I don't really hold the clunky feminism against it too much. A.A. Bowser, Steve, how should one handle an emotionally charged argument? Do you often register an emotional reaction when you're having a discussion? And if so, how do you usually deal with that sort of thing? I listened to a podcast about this problem very recently, and one piece of advice mentioned there was to write down the topic on a piece of paper and put it between both parties to avoid unrelated tangents. They also spoke a great deal about a sacred cow, which is a belief or opinion someone refuses to discuss no matter what, like a religious person refusing to look at evidence that may persuade them to convert, or, to hit a little closer to home, you refusing to talk to or even listen to anti-feminists. Please correct me if I'm wrong here. How do you think someone could rid themselves of their sacred cows, assuming it's even possible? I often have emotional responses in arguments. I think having an emotional stake in an argument is not a bad thing. I think, especially in the atheist movement, we have sort of glorified this Vulcan approach to argumentation, where we should rely exclusively on completely neutral, unemotional logic in every situation. We should treat it like robots, and we should not allow our emotional attachments to influence our reactions in any way. And I think there is wisdom in not allowing your emotions to carry you away. I think there's wisdom in maintaining emotional control of yourself and not allowing your emotions to bias you too far. But depending on the issue, I think an emotional attachment and an emotional reaction is not only unavoidable, but is good, especially if you're arguing about like a human rights issue. I think if you don't have some emotional stakes in there, I would kind of look at you sideways and think, well, why don't you care about this? You know? As for sacred cows, I suppose some people would say, anti-feminists would say that my refusal to engage with them is a sacred cow, but I wouldn't characterize it as a sacred cow. I would characterize it as me not wanting to give the time of day to bigoted people who are pushing intolerant points of view and promoting ignorance and hate speech and marginalization and oppression. And, you know, to take it back to an emotional degree, there's also the emotional part of me that says, you know what, fuck those people. Fuck those people. Their ideas are garbage. The fact that they promote them and perpetuate them makes them garbage. So to hell with them. I've got better shit to do with my time than to entertain misogynistic assholes and listen to their bullshit arguments that I've heard 100 times before anyway. So maybe if that means that that's a sacred cow for me, I will leave that to you. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as me choosing not to engage with people who have shown themselves to have shitty ideas and be shitty people. Scott Bressinger, have you ever considered applying to be a contestant on Jeopardy? How well do you think you'd do if you were there? You seem to have a broad knowledge base and the ability to think on your feet. In all sincerity, I think you'd kick some trivia ass. You may respond in the form of a question, or in any way you feel like. Thanks again for taking my questions. I'm really good at Jeopardy from the couch. Like I have a lot, my head is full of a lot of random useless knowledge. So I'm really good at Jeopardy most of the time from my couch. But there are times when I know absolutely nothing. You know, when a category will come up and it's something that is just a blind spot for me and I don't know shit about it. And there are episodes where there's a lot of those. There are episodes of Jeopardy where I sit there and I go, I don't know that, I don't know that, I don't know that. I guessed at that one, that was wrong. I thought I knew that one, I didn't know that one. You know, so even though my average is pretty good, there are certainly times where I watch it and I go, wow, I am completely stumped on all of this stuff. So, you know, if I try out for Jeopardy and that ends up being my episode, where it's a bunch of categories that I don't know much about, then I'm fucked. And also, when you're actually playing Jeopardy, you're playing against two other people. So it's not simply a matter of shouting out the answer from your couch. It's a matter of buzzing in first before the others and then getting the right answer out. So it's a lot tougher than it looks. I'm quite sure. No, I've never tried out for it. I've never seriously considered trying out for it. Some random geek. Hey Steve, did you hear about PewDiePie saying the N-bomb during a live stream while being frustrated at a video game? What do you think about that situation? Do you think it is a problem with the man who is the face of YouTube having over 57 million subs, of which are mostly a lot of young and impressionable boys, to say something like that? What do you think about his response? Could this situation affect YouTube and or YouTube creators in some way? Yeah, it's a problem. It's a huge problem for YouTube when one of its most popular and visible personalities is a racist. And I don't really see how you can honestly say that PewDiePie isn't a racist at this point. I know he doesn't say he's a racist. I know he denies that he's racist. But given his history of other anti-Semitic activities and remarks, and given the fact that he knows he's on a live stream, he knows he's broadcasting live to hundreds of thousands, millions of people while he's playing this game, and he encounters a frustrating situation in the game, and the first word out of his mouth is the most universally condemned, hated racial slur in the English language. Like, that just popped out. But he's not racist. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And what YouTube should do, if they really want to turn this to their advantage, is just delete the motherfucker's channel. If YouTube took this as an opportunity to say, you know what, this is the last straw, we've heard about stuff about him before, I know that he's a big player for us, I know he makes us a lot of money, but you know what, some things are more important than that, and we want to show that we are serious about cracking down on hate speech and abuse and harassment and racists using this platform, so bye-bye, PewDiePie. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think YouTube is going to do that, but that's what they should do. And if they did that, it would go a very long way towards showing that they are actually serious about addressing the massive problems of people promoting hate speech and intolerance on this platform. Like I say, though, they're not going to do it. But sure, oh boy, it would be nice if they did it, wouldn't it? Anyway, here's something else that might be nice.
The lightning round.
Segways? We don't need no stinking segways. That was bad even by my standards. Jay Dottify, was that a Wilhelm scream? I believe it was. Specific hieroglyphics, meow 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 or meow meow meow. You can only pick one, Steve. How about meow 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 meow. How about that? I'll pick that one. I know that wasn't an option, but that's what I'm going with. Ahoy Erno, will Canada pay for the wall in the north? Man, I will help pay for the wall in the north if Canada lets me go over to their side when it's done. What about it, Canadians? I will help you pay for it. I will help pay for the wall between Canada and the US as long as you promise that I get to come over to your side when it's done. Please? Oh God, please. James Russell, as a Doctor Who fan of over 3 decades standing, I'm delighted to see you've started watching the show, but I gather you've started with the revival of the program. Any plans to watch the original 1963 to 89 series at any point? Yeah, I would like to. I remember watching some of the older show many years ago, because of course we watched it on, in the United States they play it on PBS, or at least they used to. They would play it on PBS like late at night on weekends, and it was always the Tom Baker episodes, you know, it was always Fourth Doctor stuff. And I remember watching some of it here and there and thinking it was kind of cool, kind of weird, you know, but I never got super into it. But yes, I think I would like to watch some of those old shows. It's a very large catalog to catch up on, but I would like to watch some of them eventually to see some of the classic episodes. Joshua Purvis, hi Steve, hope you're having a great day. My question is, what was some of Sylvester Stallone movies? Thanks, and I enjoy your podcast. It's awesome and entertaining. Thanks for answering my question, Steve. I appreciate it. Well, thank you, Joshua. I guess what you're asking is, what are some of my favorite Stallone movies? I take that from your question. I love the Rocky movies. I especially love Rocky 3, where it transitions from being kind of serious to just a total farce. It's just like a fantasy series. I love Clubber Lang. He's one of my favorite villains. He's a complete cartoon character. I love the Rambo series. Again, as jingoistic and awful as it is, they're also some of the finest, so bad they're good movies ever made. And actually the last Rambo movie that Stallone wrote and directed himself was kind of good. Like, I thought it was a really well-directed action movie. So those are some of my Tango and Cash. How can you talk about Sylvester Stallone movies and movies that are so bad they're good without mentioning Tango and Cash and Cobra? Those are masterpieces of bad movies. Lucas Hackett. Hey Steve, out of all of these 4 cartoon villains I'm going to mention, which one of these would win in a Hell in a Cell fatal 4-way match? Shredder, Cobra Commander, Skeletor, or Mumm-Ra? I would go with Cobra Commander, because he always lost to the Joes, but he did at least manage to beat Serpentor eventually and take back control of Cobra. The other 3, I think, are basically just jobbers to the stars. Like, Skeletor always loses to He-Man, Shredder always loses to the Turtles, Mumm-Ra always loses to the Thundercats, Cobra Commander always loses to G.I. Joe, but at least he beat Serpentor that one time, so he at least has a winning record. So I would go with Cobra Commander. Radical Bacon. I went to an awful community theater production of Jesus Christ Superstar. How do I get that song hook out of my head? Well, the best way that I know of is just to replace it with something else. You know, maybe listen to one of the catchier songs from the Hamilton soundtrack, or like a really hooky pop song to displace it out of your head, or maybe something get another earworm in there to replace the Jesus Christ Superstar song. Something like I don't know, like meow 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 meow, something like that. You know, gets it out of there. Lepa, did you take the political compass test? I'm very curious to see where you are. Yes, I did. I took the political compass test on I think it's politicalcompass.org, and this is what I got. So there you go. That's me. Very much a left libertarian, down there toward that lower left-hand corner. Steven Sobal. Hey, Steve, can you provide us with a brief compare and contrast of MasterChef and professional wrestling? My partner and I are sure there's a parallel, but you're the expert. Thanks. Okay, well, they have in common the fact that they're both more concerned with drama than with actual competition. I wouldn't go so far as to say MasterChef is rigged or worked like a wrestling match is, but I think the focus is very clearly on the drama as opposed to the legitimate competition. But unlike pro wrestling, the authority figures in MasterChef actually have a reason to be there. Samuel Sturgill. Steve, do you and your family ever have family reunions? And if so, what activities do you all do? No, we never have family reunions, and I'm very happy with that because I detest large family gatherings. They're one of my least favorite things in the world. I hate large family gatherings. So I'm thrilled that my family never does those. If I go to a family gathering and there's more than like 5 or 6 other people there, I hate it. I'm just ready to leave as soon as I get there. So yeah, no family reunions. And oh, thank you, family. John Brockman, so when are you going to kill off Jack McPherson? Oh, bite your tongue. Never. I'm never killing off Jack McPherson. That's one of my favorite characters, and he's one of the most fun to do. And he's great because he's funny just by being belligerent. I find him amusing just by his personality. I don't even feel like I have to write jokes for Jack. I just have to give Jack space to be Jack, and he does what I need him to do. So no, I'm never killing off Jack. How dare you? How dare you even suggest such a thing, John? That's it for the questions. That's it for the lightning round. It's time now for the shout out. The shout out this week goes to an organization called Crossroads Antiracism Training. You know, an ESPN reporter got into hot water this week for saying something true about President Trump, which is that he is a white supremacist. In response to that, the White House said that she should have been fired. Thankfully, ESPN did not take that advice. They chose not to fire their reporter for saying the true thing about the President of the United States, who is a white supremacist, lest anybody have forgotten that. But it's a good opportunity to have a learning moment, to have a teachable moment. Instead of denying that white supremacy exists and is embodied by the present President of the United States, we should work on doing something about that. And an organization that does something about that is Crossroads Antiracism Training, which works on addressing racism in a systemic way. It tries to respond to systemic racism within institutions, within organizations, within communities, by training people to recognize it and giving them ways to counteract it, to change the way they do business, to change the way they treat people, so that systemic racism will no longer be a problem within whatever sphere we're talking about. It's a terrific organization. It is doing very, very sadly needed work and addressing a very serious, urgent problem, and that is my shout out. Go check out their website, see what they do, see if it's something that you feel like taking part in or supporting, and share it around. Let people know that such organizations exist, and that the best way to deal with racism is not to deny it or to tell people who complain about it or point it out to shut up or punish them, but to actually do something about it, to change our own attitudes and change our institutions and change the way we do things, so that racism is no longer something that infects our minds and our hearts and our communities. I don't know, how about that? That's a good way to fix it. We should at least try, don't you think? Let's try. Let's try, shall we? I know not everybody's on board with that, but I think it's a neat idea. I also want to remind you, as always, to check out the Lemme Listen podcasts. These are podcasts that are created by my very good friend Jason Harding, the puppet master of Opinionville. There's a whole bunch of excellent Lemme Listen podcasts on the roster, but the one that I like to point out specifically is the Late Seating podcast, which is a belated movie review podcast co-hosted by Jason and me, where we take a fresh look at a movie that has a reputation of either being good or bad, and boy, we've got a doozy for you this week. Our new episode, which goes up this very day, the day this video goes up, is our review of Zack Snyder's 2007 magnum opus, 300. Oh boy, listen to our review of 300, won't you? Because we had to watch 300 in order to do it. So it would be great if that wasn't for nothing, and you listen to our episode talking about 300. It's a really good episode. It went really well. I think we said some things about 300 that need to be said. So check it out. Check out our new episode, our review of 300. Check out our past episodes, and check out all of the episodes of all of the awesome Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcast.com. There you go. That's it for me, everybody. I'm done for another week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your questions. I will be back next week with another episode of this series where I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can. But in order for that to happen, you have to ask. So please, please, please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for the next You Had to Ask video. That's the way it works. You want to ask me a question for the next video, leave it as a comment to this video, and I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can. Nothing is too serious, nothing is too silly. The only limitation is the time and whether or not I have a good answer. That's it for me, folks. Thank you once again for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care. Hey, one more thing before I go. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron of this channel. Thank you so much for watching.